Boy turns to his father. It's a teenage boy. And he says, listen to me, Dad. If you ever talk to me like that again or tell me what to do, I will take you off my call list and I will never, ever visit you again. There's approximately 3,000 to 3,500 Jews that are in prison. This warden, he picks up his feet and he was wearing big boots with spurs and he puts them on the desk and he looks at him and he says, God, in here I'm God. And I say there'll be no kosher.
The Aleph Institute, how do they help out the families of the incarcerated? Like as far as camps, rent, and gifts?
An orphan, people pity them. The children of somebody who's incarcerated, they get judged. He was able to be there to put on tefillin with his son and to celebrate, and had that day to be with his family, and of course had to go back after. Yeah. And it was overheard this little boy telling a friend of his, you see, I told you I have a tati. I wasn't lying to you. As the motto of Aleph is, no one alone, no one forgotten.
This episode is sponsored by Candid Recruits. Candid Recruits serves the tri-state area. Are you a business owner? Are you an employee? Are you looking to hire or are you looking to find a better job? Call Candid Recruits. They are connecting the right people with the right jobs. They have over 300 successful hires already. They are vetting every employee to the highest level, from white collar to blue collar to everything in between. And the best part of Candid Recruits is they charge a flat fee versus the other agencies who charge 25% of the salary. So do yourself a favor and reach out to Candid Recruits at 845-828-9210. Call now. Okay. Today, we are stepping behind the walls of prison. Our guest today is Rabbi Aaron Lipskar. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the great organization, the Aleph Institute. The Aleph Institute for decades has been the lifeline for a lot of people in prison and for Jewish prisoners and their families. The Aleph Institute also provides services for military personnel, amazing stuff, and for their families who are torn apart because of incarceration. So the Aleph Institute is an amazing, amazing organization. Rabbi Lipskar has walked through the cell blocks and sat with the broken. Rabbi Lipskar, welcome to the Struggle Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you and to speak to your audience. And I'm hopeful that what we can share today and discuss today will shed some light on this environment and the struggles that those that we work with face, and some of the things that we do to try and alleviate those issues. And I look forward to sharing what I can and hope that it will have an impact.
Excellent, excellent. And thank you. I appreciate you coming in. So before we start, first I want to establish the idea of mitzvahs pidyon shavim. First, we have to understand whatever is happening, people are incarcerated, and whatever they did, it's not our job. Our job is to not judge. That's why we're not the judges. Our job is to help. Whatever Hashem's ways, and they ended up where they ended up. But from our point of view, from Aleph's point of view, is mitzvahs pidyon shavim, correct?
Absolutely correct. And as we'll talk, we'll get into some of the different types of services and programs that we provide. Obviously, there are certain restrictions that we have in providing these things, but as a fundamental starting point, as you mentioned, for any person that finds themselves in this situation, incarcerated or facing the criminal justice system, as you said, our job is not to judge them. Our job is not to determine guilt or innocence. Our job is to be there to support them, and we'll discuss the different ways that we do that.
So we know that Ahavas Yisrael is what it's all about, and is forgiveness coming in here? Because sometimes there's crimes that people are like, oh, he belongs in prison, this is what he did, and everybody is like, has their own opinion. But does forgiveness come in your organization? The way you look at people is you literally do not want to know what is behind the story of every individual?
Well, certainly we have to understand each individual situation and the case. And in many of the programs and things that we do, there's a lot of mitigation that goes into understanding the person, their background, their family situation, and how this situation played out. Not because we're looking just to have information, chas v'shalom, but when we advocate, and we'll talk about in the courts, with concepts of alternative sentencing, or when we advocate with the government for other types of relief, it's important that we're able to present the full picture of who the person is. Unfortunately, within our criminal justice system, when it comes to the sentencing of a person for an alleged crime or what they've been found guilty in the court of law, part of the issue is that the court and the law only looks at this one act or this set of circumstances that the person is facing the sentencing. Our job and our objective is to try and show that there's a whole person behind that. There's a whole world behind it. There's a whole family behind it. And to bring some perspective beyond what you might call an anomaly, this behavior, which may have been completely out of the ordinary or caused by a certain set of circumstances which led them to the situation.
Wow, it's amazing work. Now you are the nephew of the founder of Rabbi Lipskar. Now this was his brainchild. What is the story behind how did Aleph even start?
So the history of Aleph goes back to approximately 1980, 1981, and it was in fact the Lubavitcher Rebbe who spoke passionately beforehand and regarding this matter. And at a particular Farbrengen, the week before, my uncle, Rabbi Aaron Lipskar, Olav Shalom, who, as you said, was a founder of this program, was communicated to the Rebbe that he was working on certain things and certain different projects and different ideas. And the Rebbe gave him an answer that the Eibishter wird dir geben a machshava teva. The Eibishter will give you the right idea, will give you a good thought of where you should put your efforts. He was in between a few different things. He was also at the time close to starting the Shul of Bal Harbor. And at that particular Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke very, very impassioned about the plight of Yidden that find themselves incarcerated. And that at that time, there was a lot of kiruv being done, people going out, as we know with Chabad, into the streets, to be Makarav Yidden, to find them. And the Rebbe spoke that we're doing all this work, searching for Yidden, but there are thousands of Yidden, unfortunately, sitting and waiting that somebody should come to them.
And nobody even spoke, and nobody even thought about that before.
There were some small things that were done, but not on a mass scale. And he heard that message, and it resonated deeply with him. The story actually goes that the way that the Rebbe's Farbrengens would be recorded, there were the chayzim, there were those that after Shabbos would sit together and review, and those with tremendous photographic memories, and go through the Farbrengens and write everything down and submit it to the Rebbe for his comment and for his overview. And at this particular time, my uncle was there, that Motzei Shabbos, and he mentioned this piece, and others didn't really pick up on it. There was a room of thousands of people that day, and nobody really picked up on it, but he heard it, and he wrote into Lubavitcher Rebbe. He said this idea that he's going to start this program. The Rebbe gave him a beautiful, warm answer. He said, "Tach tach teidachama, thank you very, very much," and that's really where it started. In the early days, the first place, because he lived in Miami, is he started to make arrangements to go and visit with a group of Jewish men that were incarcerated in the prison in Miami. And at the time, it was a fairly large group. There was 25 or closer to 30 people that were there. And he started a schedule that he would visit with them once or twice a week. And then he would also spend time connecting with their families. And as maybe your listeners know, he was a very, very powerful and impactful teacher. And within a short time, he really had a deep impact on this group of Yidden. And they wanted to start to transform themselves, bring themselves in terms of their Yiddishkeit. Mm-hmm. And this is a fascinating story, actually. Mm-hmm. So they started with film and with davening and teaching them. And it came a point that they wanted to start keeping kosher. So at the time, he went to speak to the warden of the prison. The warden's name was Cohen, but with a K, not with a like a Cohen. And what was his big yichus? His big yichus was that his father was a warden, his Zayda was a warden. This was, a real tough Southerner. And he goes into the warden's office and he says, I would like to discuss about creating a program where we can provide kosher to the Jewish men that are here. And he asked him, he said, Rabbi, why should I give them kosher food? Why should I do that? So he remembers, he would recall, he said he looked around and he saw that on the walls of the office were all these Bible verses. And so he figured this is a deeply religious man. And maybe if he, approaches it from the idea that it's in the Bible and it's a biblical commandment and God commands Jews to keep kosher. So he attempts to say this. He says, I'll never forget this warden. He picks up his feet and he was wearing big boots with spurs and he puts them on the desk and he looks at him and he says, God, in here I'm God, and I say there'll be no kosher. That was the story. Now there's a something which they call diesel therapy or diesel treatment in the prison system, where at any time there are many, many federal inmates that are in transit, being transferred to different prisons for whatever reasons that they're being moved. And they call it diesel treatment because in many instances, even if a person is moving one state over or not that far, sometimes they put them on a long transport. They handcuff them, they shackle them on a bus, and they can end up in a county jail, and they can end up in a state prison till they get to where they're going. It could be it could be months, and it's a terrible, terrible thing the way they keep them shackled that way. But the story is told, they called it the Tuesday Massacre. The Tuesday Massacre was that next Tuesday morning. These 25 to 30 Jewish guys were woken up, rounded up, and this warden decided, I'm going to break up this Jewish group. Enough is enough. And he had them all designated to different prisons all over the country. And but what happened? What happened was these different guys each ended up going ultimately to different federal prisons. But along the way, they stopped at many county jails, state prisons, and wherever they would end up, they would meet other Yidden in many of these places, and they would tell them, by the way, there's a rabbi in Miami that if you need help, or if you want to learn, or if you have a problem, you should reach out to him. So this was almost like the grassroots effort. So I don't know if we say that this anti-Semitic warden or the people that were in prison themselves were really the catalyst for this growing. This is way before, email blasts and text messages and WhatsApp. Wow. So within a very short time, there was literally hundreds of correspondence and letters coming in to the office in Miami. And within a very short time, this, work was being done in hundreds of locations. And that's kind of a little bit of how it all started.
Wow, it's a fascinating story. Now, how did he came up with the name Aleph?
So Aleph was, thought about, and different Jewish symbols were thought about. A menorah is always, a Jewish symbol. A Magen David. There's different things that could be recognized that this is a Jewish program. But an Aleph, who knows what an Aleph is? An Aleph is somebody that learned Aleph Beis and versteht what's an Aleph.
Right.
But it's also for a few other reasons. If you take the word Geula, which means exile, and you add an Aleph, you have the word Geula. And the idea here is to bring redemption to people.
Wow.
And also the construct of the Aleph. Interestingly, I have to mention today, Bashkacha Pratis is Chai Elul, which is the birthday of, as we say, Shnei Me'iris Hagdela, which was the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, and the Baal Shem Tov. Wow. His birthdays are today. We'll share a few things about that and the significance of how it relates to Aleph, the Aleph Institute. But in the construct of the letter Aleph, you have the Yud, which is on top, you have the Yud, which is on the bottom, and you have the line, which is in the middle. So we say the Yud on top is the Eibishter, is Hashem. The Yud on the bottom is the Yid, and the line in the middle is the Torah. So when we can connect Yidden through Torah, even if they're on the bottom, we can connect them to the top, which is the Eibishter. So the Aleph has that powerful, and in fact, the Rebbe one time mentioned at a dollars, somebody went by and mentioned that they work for Aleph, and the Rebbe commented and said that the Aleph is, as the first letter of the Aleph Beis, is a Wegweiser. It's a lodestar. Right. It shows the way to all the rest of the letters. So that's, where we talk about the Pinteliyid connected through Aleph. So those are some of the reasons that Aleph has that name.
Beautiful meaning behind it. I love it. So it is fair to say that the Aleph Institute is fighting loneliness. And we heard this from your uncle also, that he was saying that that is probably the place where you can find the most loneliness. If a person finds himself behind bars and he's leaving behind a community and a family, you don't get more lonely than that.
It certainly is. And even within the structure of the environment, sometimes people speak about what they consider, nicer prisons, more comfortable
Camps
prisons,
and
a camp, or there's other people there, a sense of that sort of community. But just in fact, a short few weeks ago, I was speaking with a person that was scheduled to go the following day to report to a prison camp, and hearing his struggle and speaking with his family, with his wife, of what he was facing, but then just to hear from his children afterwards, just as they watched him, their 60-plus-year-old father kind of walking into the environment, having to leave all of his personal things, and going in there, you become a number. You become a number, and that's how you're identified. In many of these environments, they don't refer to people by their first name.
Yeah.
They refer to them as inmate, or they refer to them as, now that's less politically correct, they say incarcerated person, or by their number. And so the sense of loneliness and disconnect, especially in a environment such as with Yidden, that our lives are so intertwined and connected, Shabbos, Yom Tov, every single day, Minyanim, whatever it might be. And even if in some of these places they do provide it, but in many places it could be an individual person. And that sense of being alone, and that sense of insecurity, and not knowing, and not even sometimes having the ability freely to have communication to the outside. There are emails, there are other opportunities, there are phones, but that sense. And then certainly there are punitive types of punishments, which we've actually been addressing at great length recently with the Bureau of Prisons and in other environments, which is the idea of solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is just
inhumane.
Inhumane.
The punishment is inhumane. The humiliation also is this designed to humiliate the person? Because they're calling it correction, rehab. Is this a punishment or is this a rehab?
So, it's interesting you say correction, because that is the name of the environment.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a correctional environment. And Baruch Hashem, through great efforts, we've been able to introduce more and more positive programming and learning and teaching and opportunities. But generally, the environment is not a corrective environment. It's an environment which just warehouses people and places them in what you might say like a suspended animation. They have no control over any aspect of their day. When they wake up, when they go to sleep, when they eat, what they do, it's all regimented, and they have no control over that. You mentioned about correction, the idea of being in solitary confinement. It's used, unfortunately, as well, even just as the threat to say, you do behave like this, we'll lock you up in solitary. Just the trauma that causes a person having to think about that, or knowing others that have gone through that, to sit alone in a 6x4 cell with nothing else for 30 days, for 60 days, for 90 days.
How does someone stay sane in a place like that?
People, unfortunately, do break. There are other people that will tell stories of how they found an inner strength within themselves that they never understood that they had. But the long-term damage and effects on people is something that they live with long after they're out.
This is supposed to be a punishment in a punishment, which means, being in jail is a punishment enough, being in prison, and then this is the way they feel that this is how they can control the prison system.
Absolutely.
Now, what you guys are talking about, we'll talk about it soon, about the CARES Act and the First Step Act. What other alternatives do you recommend when you go and you lobby for these things, as far as sentencing and talking about solitary confinement? What do you offer? Like, what kind of recommendations do you have as far as not being so strict with punishment?
Well, for starters, just backing up a little bit, one of the areas that we work in, one of the departments that we have, is called an alternative sentencing department. I believe it was, one of the people that run that program for us, Rabbi Brisky. He was just featured in one of the Ami magazine, talking a little bit about what he does. The objective of that is, as we are living in a society today which is becoming more mindful of criminal justice and looking at criminal justice reform, to seek alternatives to incarceration or only incarceration. And that's what I mentioned earlier, that obviously there are the nature of certain crimes where this would not be possible for us to advocate. But in the event that this is something which is a nonviolent, first-time, white-collar offense, something which we can propose an effective alternative, which the effective alternative is not to minimize the damage, not to minimize the responsibility, not to minimize what may have been done wrong, but to talk about a constructive way to address this person. And we, Baruch Hashem, have seen a lot of success with that. Beyond advocating for the individuals in the individual cases in the courts, we also do a lot of work reaching out to the judicial environment and to the legislative environment, other environments. We've had opportunities with some of the people that work with us, some wonderful attorneys that work with us and give of their time pro bono to give testimony in front of the Sentencing Commission, to talk about these draconian sentences and different ways to advise judges, because there was a period of time that sentencing was advisory. Judges had the discretion. Obviously, there's a scoring system based on the different elements, and then judges, are given a recommendation by the probation to say it should carry this length, these amount of months to these amount of months. Then there was a period of time where it became mandatory. Judges did not have that discretion, but now they have that discretion again. And we work both directly in the courts, but also we host very large summits, approximately once a year, maybe every year and a half, at some of the big leading law schools. And we've done it at Columbia, we did it in D.C., at George Washington, and other places, where we bring together hundreds of jurists, different judges, prosecutors, lawyers, and all different types of individuals that are focused on this issue, to talk about what alternatives exist. Many courts have created alternative types of programs, and to try to expand those. But everything is very, very specific and tailor-made to the individual, to the nature of what the offense is. It's very restrictive in many instances. As I said, it's not to alleviate the culpability, but it's to create a productive opportunity for this person to repay what they've done to society in a more productive way than just being locked away and for a certain amount of time.
Wow. Now, what would you say, how many Jews are in prison as we speak? If you would say, a number.
So I would say at this point, it may, not be as many as people think, maybe unfortunately not as few, but I would say that there's approximately 3,000 to 3,500 Jews that are in prison.
Scattered
all over, the federal, state, county systems all over.
You're talking about the United States.
In that case, I'm talking about the United States. Since you mentioned that, in recent years, we also have an international division.
Because I know you guys were involved in Bolivia with this, with Sean Penn, and this. You were behind all this. There was some crazy story going on over there.
It was a crazy story. It's a very fascinating story how it all played out.
Yeah.
But that, we were involved in that case in Bolivia. It was through our efforts, Bashkacha Pratis was somebody that we met, that we actually got to Sean Penn, because the story is that, I had the opportunity. I was visiting with our office in California. We have an office in California. We have an office in New York, because our people operate all over the country. And this case had come up. And it was very fascinating because it was Hanukkah time.
Yeah.
And there's a famous actor in Hollywood who has a history. He's connected to the criminal justice system, and he's very passionate about it. And he's very devout in his way. And somebody that the person that I work with in California had met said, I know him, I can introduce you to him. So it ends up that we ended up going to his house. and we spent time with him. And he was very, very intrigued by the work that we're doing, and he committed himself to help in any way if he could. And at that time, we were dealing with this situation in Bolivia. Just to give some context, we work in a lot of countries. We've worked in over 40 countries now. But in many instances, you have options through the State Department, especially if you're dealing with a U.S. citizen, that they have diplomatic relationships. Other countries, such as Bolivia, there's no relationship with the United States, where there's tremendous amount of corruption and other issues, as was evident in this particular case. And also looking at their prison system, where this person was being held at the time, it's a place which is completely inhumane. There's basically no prison guards that are inside. It's like a city, and at night they lock the doors, and people have to fend for themselves. And during the day, it's almost like they open it up, and people come in, go out, they sell things, they do things, but otherwise, there's no other controls. The people that are in the prison basically run the prison, and so it can be a very, very frightening and very, very dangerous place. And so we were trying to figure out how to be able to get to the leadership of that country. And one of the ideas was that, as you said, this other person, Sean Penn, had a relationship with a leader of a different country that had a relationship to this person. I'm leaving out the names because we don't have to get into all those specifics. And through this person that we had met in California, he had made an introduction.
Wow.
And he took this thing seriously and kind of made it and went out there and connected through all these different things till he got to the right people and was able to be helpful in helping bring a Jew home.
He was eventually released, and it was like a corruption. It was like a crazy,
tremendous corruption.
There was no light by the end of the tunnel, and this thing just took a turn. It was unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, and unfortunately, there's many other instances and countries that either have archaic type of prison environments or laws. For example, something called debtor's prison. In Cambodia. If a person takes a legitimate loan from a financial institution or to open a business, and for whatever reason the business legitimately is not successful or doesn't work, and therefore the investment is not repaid, till that person can repay that, they put them in what they call debtor's prison. Wow. Which, if you can imagine a person who has to work to repay something but is locked up in a place that he can't do anything, and the family doesn't have the ability, it could be very, very challenging. And, many other instances where we work in international countries and citizens of many different countries that are helped through this effort.
Wow, it's crazy stuff. And the Aleph Institute, how do they help out the families of the incarcerated? Like as far as camps, rent, and gifts, all these kinds of you take on a two-part. You take it on a part of the prisoner, the person who is unfortunately going to sit in prison for a certain amount of years, and you go, you have a kollel, you go in there and you teach, you learn with these people and stuff like that. Plus, you take on the family, which are the children and stuff like that. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. So, to your last point, I'll go back to it. Yes, within the prison environment, we have a very extensive what we call visitation program, where we have Bochrim, Jungelite, volunteers that go to visit prisons all around the country. At certain points in the year, it's a lot more, around Yom Tovim, or whether it's Chanukah, Purim now is coming, the Yom Neroim. We'll have many Bochrim and people that will spend time in many institutions to ensure that they have a minyan, proper, tefillas and those things. We have very extensive, as you said, learning programs, correspondence courses. We have a program called the Edel Bas Avram Yeshiva in Prison, where we conduct a 3-day program at the facility where our volunteers and people are there all day for 3 days, and it's such an opportunity to sit and learn with people, many different subject matters, to talk with them, to be mechazik them. And then, as I said, there's the advocacy side, which in many instances is not dealing with Yiddishkeit related matters at all. Of course, there are those policy issues as well, but there are transfer issues, medical issues, other types of issues that people have, which we have an advocacy team that works on. But as you mentioned, in so many of these instances, the victims of the situation are the families, spouses, children, parents. My uncle would often say that sometimes, as hard as this concept is to say, he says sometimes in concept, a child of a person that's incarcerated is worse off than an orphan, because an orphan, people pity them. The children of somebody who's incarcerated, they get judged, they get ostracized. Those families get ostracized. Those families get pushed aside. In many instances, they had no knowledge, they had no involvement, of course, and are left completely destitute. Sometimes going through the legal system is very, very costly. That can leave them completely destitute financially, certainly emotionally, deeply, deeply broken, and creates families in crisis, as you said, not being able to meet their monthly obligations towards keeping the lights on, paying the rent, putting food on the table. I'm not even talking about making sure their kids are in school. You mentioned the summer camps to ensure that these kids can have a productive, positive summer. There are statistics that show, this is more broadly, not necessarily within our communities, but more broadly, that children of somebody that's incarcerated have a very high percentage likelihood of ending up in that environment themselves. Wow. So when you think about, certainly in the summer months, where number one, a child should be in a wholesome, positive environment, you sometimes have a spouse that's working two jobs just and these kids are not in school at that time. So they get left to figure out things for their own. Unfortunately, it doesn't lead to positive things. But beyond that is to afford them the opportunity to have a healthy, positive, happy summer. But this goes beyond that. There's the trauma that they face and the psychological damage that they face. We have an excellent program, which is called the Angel Program. The Angel Program is an intern program with people that are studying at certain schools that we partner with to become therapists, family therapists, psychologists, that type of work. And on any given week, we probably have several hundred individuals that are receiving one-on-one counseling from these interns, which are properly supervised with a clinical director as part of that internship. But just to see these, the amount of emotional distress that they go through and the amount of assistance that they need, it's really endless. I'm going to segue here for a minute just to say to you that for many people, they have a focus on things that they're passionate about or that they support. Some people support medical-related issues. Some people support education. Some people have a passion of where they feel most connected and where they want to invest their time or their resources. When it comes to the work that we do at Aleph, across the gamut, it touches on everything. Yeah. Because in many instances, a child that needs to have education. Many times, it's a medical situation that can't be afforded. Many times, it's a housing crisis. Whatever it might be, it touches upon every aspect of community, society, family.
Hatzula. I mean, it's like every little organization is in this organization. It's unbelievable stuff.
And, and I can tell you that there are, at any given time, several thousand ongoing cases. And when I say that, I don't necessarily, as I said earlier, mean mitzad a religious observance type of situation, which in many times it is, but also just crisis that people are going through in that environment. And so it's really always in crisis mode. And for many of these people, they don't have who else to call. This is the only call they can make. In fact, I recall my aunt, Rabbi Aaron Lipskar, telling a story that she was in the office one day. This is years ago. And the phone is ringing, and the uncle was busy with something else. So he asked her, pick up the phone. You'll answer the phone. So she picks up the phone and said, they're recording. This is from a correctional environment to a prison environment. Do you accept the charges? Yes. Got on the phone with the person and said, okay, what can I do for you? How can we help you? What's the problem? In this particular instance, this person said, let me tell you, I know it's a resource to call you because these are collect calls.
Right.
And, I know that it's even kind of published or advertised that you utilize this only in moments of crisis or emergency. And he said, I just want to say as follows. He says, maybe what I'm calling about is not a crisis or emergency for you, but I just wanted to say that I have nobody in the world. I'm completely cut off from everybody that I ever had. And over here, people line up to use the phone, to call somebody, to call the family, to call their Lord. I have nobody to call. So I just wanted to have somebody to call. Somebody should answer my call.
Wow,
So
it's crazy. So that is also part of the chesed. That little thing is also part of the chesed. Unbelievable stuff. You were talking before about the Bureau of Prisons. Explain a little bit what that means, the Bureau of Prisons.
So the Bureau of Prisons is a government agency under the Department of Justice.
Right.
The leadership of the Bureau of Prisons, the director, is a presidential appointment. They work ultimately directly, as I said, under the Department of Justice. The structure and the function of the actual facilities, there are many institutions which are privately run. There are private companies that run the day-to-day operations of the facilities, but they are still under the umbrella and the oversight of the Bureau of Prisons.
They run these prisons a little bit better than the private ones than the government ones, or?
It really depends. Some of them are a little bit better. Some of them, pride themselves of being a little bit better. But unfortunately, when it is something which is a business, sometimes, corporations or businesses try to find more effective ways of cost-cutting measures.
Correct.
And sometimes that can, affect, the different types of services or food services, other types of things. So it's not always a plus. But just speaking of the Bureau of Prisons, it's an agency which we've worked with, since Aleph was started, and had a very positive, open working relationship. I personally have worked with 8 of the last many directors of the Bureau of Prisons. I can tell you that right now, the leadership of the Bureau of Prisons are an excellent administration. We have a very, very positive, open working relationship with them, with the director, with the assistant director. They are very, very forward-thinking in terms of many of the issues that we have been advocating for a long time, looking to create real significant change and impact in those environments, to some of the things that we've spoken about, to things like solitary confinement, to things like being able to enhance the furlough opportunities, the family components, communications, whether it's through more phone time or working on creating a tablet system, educational programs, really working very, very hard, to enhance that. And as you said, not just house individuals, but look at the responsibility of what that means. So they're excellent administration right now. And we do, as I said, have great communication with them, very, very responsive, Baruch Hashem, at every turn.
Wow. Now, what is one thing that you would want to see changed right away that you don't like in the system right now?
Well, obviously we spoke about some of the harshest things and the internal punishments that go on. But something I just mentioned, things like furloughs. There are many opportunities which exist within policy, but aren't necessarily used at the local level, because many of these things are at the discretion of the local warden or the local administration. And we would hope that, existing policy, which obviously there's other things that we're working on, would be implemented a lot more. Because especially when it comes to maintaining the family unit and maintaining that bond, it takes so much. I'm sure, your podcast called The Struggle. I'm sure you've addressed, or you address, the challenges that can go on in a conventional, regular household marriage and the challenges that exist. When you add this type of stress or disconnect, it's unimaginable, the type of challenges that come up. And when there are so many restrictions on actually trying to keep the families connected, it doesn't help at all. So working on implementing a lot more of the family opportunities and connections. Also, as I said, again, the furloughs, when possible, for people to be able to participate in critical milestone events, whether it's a big simcha in a family, or chas v'shalom, if it's a tragedy in a family, to be able to be a part of that, because to miss those moments, as well as being incarcerated when the possibility is there, is something which is additionally devastating to people.
Right, and you were successful a lot to sometimes take people to simchas and
We've had success with that. Just a few weeks ago, actually, or a little over a month ago, there's a family that young boy was his bar mitzvah, and we had worked closely with the family. The father, unfortunately, due to his situation, is incarcerated. But we were helping with this family with all the arrangements for the bar mitzvah to teach him, to help get tefillin, to get him. So, this is something we do in many instances. But in this particular case, and we hosted a nice small, very beautiful bar mitzvah for a small group of people at the shul. And one of the things that we were able to do in this particular instance, which we were careful in how we shared it with the family in advance, because we don't want to create, an expectation which is unrealistic. Because I have always found that in working in this environment, even if you have almost an absolute yes on something till it's actually happening, you don't want to, get people's hopes up. But in this instance, we were able to bring his father to the shul, to the bar mitzvah. He was able to be there to put on tefillin with his son and to celebrate, and had that day to be with his family, and of course had to go back afterwards.
Yeah, that is a sad part, right? That's not easy to go back.
There was just a very another heartbreaking story. This happened a number of years ago, a similar instance where we were able to get permission for a father to come and be a part of his son's bar mitzvah. And when you talk about the impact on the families and how it plays out, and it was overheard at the bar mitzvah that the bar mitzvah boy had a younger brother. And the younger brother maybe was 6 or 7 years old. At the time that his father went away, he was much younger. And the father was there. And it was overheard this little boy telling a friend of his, "You see, I told you I have a tati. I wasn't lying to you." So you can imagine what this boy was going through, that he's telling people I have a tati. So where is he? Where's your father? We never seen him. He doesn't come to shul. He doesn't go. We don't see him bring you to school. Where is he? And this little boy was telling his friend, "You see, I have a tati." So that's the type of deep impact. But yes, we've had the success in doing that, and we're continuing to expand that. And of course, the educational programs, greater access to that, as I mentioned, in the state systems, because when you mention the Bureau of Prisons is the Federal Bureau of Prisons. But each state has its own Department of Corrections, which is the state prisons. State jails, prisons, and then you have local county jails and other environments. So there's many different environments that are under different jurisdictions, but the Federal Bureau of Prisons is one agency that oversees the whole country. It's broken up into different regions, approximately 6 regions. Each region has a regional director, and they have the chaplaincy locally or regionally. And we somewhat follow that structure for our advocacy team, as we have advocates that are assigned to each of the regions that oversee any of the issues that are going on in the federal or state prisons in that particular region. And then we have more of our central advocacy as well. So that's how we try to.
That sounds like a lot of work and a lot of people. It's an amazing organization. So can you walk us through what a day in prison looks like, from in the morning till at night? What these people are going through?
Well, it really depends what level of custody it is. Classification, you have, as you mentioned, you have a camp, you have a low, you have a medium, you have a penitentiary. That's in the federal system. In the state systems as well, you have different levels of custody. So that is a big determining factor. But in some of the lighter environments, yes, people, they get up early in the morning. They have very set times, very, very early with the eating. Of course, if they need to accommodate davening or tefillin, everybody that is in prison has to have a job. People work. Some work in the kitchen, some work outside in the landscaping. Some people work in the library. Some people work in the chapel. Other states, you've classically heard that they're making furniture, they're making license plates. But everybody has to work. But just for perspective purposes, for a lot of personal products or hygiene products, or other things, there is a commissary
Right.
in the prison, and people have to purchase those things on their own. That also connects to how they purchase, it used to be stamps for mail or paying for phone call, whatever it might be. It goes through the commissary, and the standard going wage for a person who's in prison who has to be compensated for their work is 25 cents an hour. So for somebody who is completely destitute and needs to buy a toothbrush or a bar of soap, or even to supplement their diet with some type of additional food, at 25 cents an hour, it's not getting you very far. We also help with that.
You help putting in money into people's accounts?
There are many people that are as completely destitute, have nothing, and on a monthly basis, we provide stipends into their commissary accounts just so that they should be able to afford sometimes the basics, which is having a direct impact on that person for their simplest, most human needs sometimes.
It is crazy stuff. I mean, people don't even know about it. I mean, they know Aleph Institute, but the stuff that you're sharing over here is beyond. Now, let me ask you a question as far as men versus women. Is it in the Jewish population? Are there Jewish women in prisons as well? And what is the numbers? It's not 50-50, I'm assuming. Let's take a quick pause. Here on the Struggle Podcast, we always talk about struggles, pain, suffering. Everyone can use a break. What is a better way to rejuvenate and to relax is to get away to the mansion at the Poconos. This is a mansion that sits on 37 acres. It hosts 60 guests. It has kosher food. It is good for Sheva Bruches. It is good for Bar Mitzvah. It is good for family gatherings. And it has everything and anything you can imagine, from pools to tennis courts, the hot tubs. This could be lovely for you and for your family. Please call 845-558-7280.
No, it's not 50-50 at all. The numbers, there are Jewish women that are in prison and in jails. The numbers are far smaller. I would say that maybe in the range of 300 to 400. So it's a much smaller percentage.
But you guys have a database, and you know and you help women differently, the way whatever they need, you help them just like you help the men.
Absolutely. We advocate. We provide these different services. We provide visitations. We have some volunteers and rebbitzins and wonderful people that go to the women's prisons. We just had them do a visit in one of the places this past week, leading up to Rosh Hashanah. We'll have what we call the Yeshiva in Prison opportunity in the women's facilities as well. Learning and bring in groups of volunteers, women and others in the communities that are inclined to participate.
Are these women incarcerated because of white collar crime? What kind of crimes? Like men are like, they're on the street. It's a lot of money and this and that. But what are women incarcerated for?
Across the board, unfortunately. It's every type of situation. Oftentimes it could be theft, it could be white collar, it could be violence, unfortunately, it could be drug related, and other types of things that we could understand that sometimes a desperate woman might fall into. And we've addressed that extensively. I know that, on this struggle, you address a lot of matters that deal with addiction or mental health or things of that nature. But unfortunately, the way that a lot of people that end up breaking the law, and in many instances, it could even be petty things, but it is repetitive, so they become repeat offenders, and therefore they're looked at very differently. That it's actually direct, and this is men and women, this is directly connected to mental health, to addiction-related issues. And in some of the county jails and other places in our country, some of the, what you might call the mental health prison unit could have hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are incarcerated there, whether, and unfortunately, we're finding that, with a mental health crisis and epidemic, they're not being given the proper treatment, the proper medications, the proper help that they need. They're simply just being incarcerated to control them. And, that's another big area of advocacy to certainly when it's this type of, that's the catalyst for why they find themselves there. That's another area to work with the courts, to work very hard to get people into the right environments, into the right rehabilitation environments, or into the right mental health facilities, even if it's very restrictive, of course, but that they should be getting the proper treatment. They should be getting the proper medication. They should be getting the help that they need. And we see that constantly. And even people who continue to get themselves into all sorts of trouble while being incarcerated, which sometimes can extend their incarceration period purely because they're just not being treated for something else, and continues to perpetuate this erratic behavior.
Wow. Now, as far as fear, we know that, people who are sentenced and they have fear, or people who are in prison, they also have fear. What is the fear that you find that most people have? Is it from other inmates, or is it from the guard? Where do you find is the major fear?
Well, I would say it's a combination of the above. The reality is that in some instances, I can tell you that in certain places, there are, and I've personally dealt with some of these even more recently, there are people that are sentenced to very, very harsh environments.
It's not a safe place.
Not a safe place. And even environments where we have been asked specifically, either by the person or by the family or by others, please do not come and visit. Please do not send anything. Please do not do anything that will identify me to the population that's around me. And so in those instances, we try potentially to have them move to a more secure environment. But some of these higher security prisons can be a very dangerous place and people are very, very vulnerable in that environment. Sometimes the harshness of the conditions of confinement, and the way that they're being treated by those that are there to probably take care of them or to protect them, is something which could be a fear as well. There's constantly a fear of retribution, meaning if somebody's afraid that if they speak out, if there was an injustice or something that they should have received or they didn't receive, or other things that if they speak out, somehow it's, they'll take nakama on them. And we see it. And it's something which we try to fight, and that's where we work at the top levels of all these different systems. But these are things that are happening every day. So in certain environments, people are more protected, they protect themselves, and in the lower, but in certain of the environments, it can be a very, very dangerous
Rikers
place.
Island is one of those places, right?
It is, and it's a very frightening place to be.
Yeah.
And if somebody gets locked up sometimes in solitary confinement or in some other situation, it could be days, if not weeks, till anybody figures out where they are, what's going on with them, or what's happening with them. Even in some of the other environments, I've received calls sometimes from family. We haven't heard from him. We haven't heard from our father. We haven't heard from our husband. Like, can you find out what's going on? What happened over here? So that level of not being able to communicate as well creates that. You asked earlier about the women's prisons as well. It's across the board. When I first started with Aleph many, many years ago, I started as a volunteer because we have a very extensive summer visitation program where we send Bochrim who volunteered to go all over the country, hundreds of facilities, specifically during the summer. And I did one summer many years ago, the state of Florida and part of Georgia, and visited probably about 110 facilities during that 6-week period. But at the time, I also visited some women's prisons and some very, very high security women's prisons in Georgia and parts of Florida. And of course, there are many unique situations that relate to women that do not relate to men. Sometimes we have situations with a person who's pregnant, who's going into prison, and will have to have a baby in prison. And addressing that need, or some of the medical types of issues that they have. So we do have an initiative that we're pushing and adding to the work that we do, in addition to all of the regular advocacy. An initiative is specific to addressing the advocacy needs of women in prison.
It's unbelievable stuff. Now, if if someone in prison needs mental health, do the prisons provide professional help where they can sit once a week, 2 times a week? I know some, they got to get it out. They want to talk. Is this professional? They can really help themselves over there, or is just the minimum?
It's really the minimum. There are programs, and that's what you asked earlier. And I said that Bureau of Prisons are constantly looking to enhance their services, the programs. Of course, within every facility there is medical, which medical is not only a physical ailment,
right.
but where they have opportunities to have a counselor, to have somebody that they can speak to. But in most instances, you're talking with a very large population. So for them to get real effective assistance is very, very difficult. As we said before, also sometimes receiving the right medications
Right.
is something which just is not within what they provide. And there's alternatives or other types, and it's sometimes just completely ineffective. And that's why there's a lot of advocacy that goes on in that environment to talk with medical in Washington, at Bureau of Prisons and other environments, to try and ensure that people who require medications, both for physical ailments or for mental ailments, can get what they need. And that's a big part of the visitations, which we try to supplement, because sometimes it's beyond a person that has a real acute problem and need. It's just that human interaction and that human connection, and somebody showing up and just saying you matter and you care. And of course, we work closely with the chaplaincy, which is religious services, which sometimes has to address a lot of these issues from that perspective.
What would you say is the biggest pain that a person who is in prison, incarcerated, what is his biggest complaint?
For many people, maybe it's food. For many people, certainly the challenge as it relates to connecting with their family. I mentioned earlier that a person that's incarcerated, it's almost like being in suspended animation. And again, I'll refer to my uncle on this, show him that he would tell the story that there was a person that was in prison. He knew this man. Before this person went in, he was a very successful person, very proud. And as it turns out, he had a teenage son. And the mother, the wife, was having a very challenging time with her son. And he was not listening, not behaving. And she asked, could you please accompany me to the next prison visit so we can talk about this as a family, we can try to address this matter. And he says, I'll never forget, he was sitting, and after they start talking a little bit, the mother starts to say to her husband, son that's here, he's not really behaving well in school, other things, getting mixed up with the wrong people, whatever it was that so the father turns to his son and he tries to discipline him a little bit and tries to say, within 1 second, he says, he sat there stunned. He said, this boy turns to his father. It's a teenage boy. And he says, listen to me, Dad. If you ever talk to me like that again or tell me what to do, I will take you off my call list and I will never, ever visit you again. He says, you watch this father shrink down. He wants to bury himself. He says, and they have zero control, zero ability to control any situation. And I guess that's a tremendous pain for somebody that is used to managing their own life or dealing with, and all of a sudden, all of that is taken away from you. In many instances where it's a prison environment where they are housed in a cell, it's very complicated. All of a sudden, you're locked up in a cell, sometimes for most of the day, many hours in the day. You talk about a person who wants to daven, let's say, but in the middle of the cell, first of all, you're with your cellmates, who aren't necessarily always the friendliest, and the toilet is in the cell. So just every type of challenge of just a normal situation is taken away, and how to navigate those things.
Yeah, because someone told me once the idea of not being needed, and we used to being a giver, the bills are being paid, mortgages, everything is you're not needed. You put away, and that is tremendous pain.
Because you're alive, but you're not alive.
Correct.
And of course, the pain of the embarrassment, the pain of the judgment,
The shame.
the shame of it. That's another component that when you look at the sentencing components in a federal environment, there's different components they look at: restitution, retribution, public safety, all these types of things. And something which we've tried to include sometimes, just for the perspective of some of the judges, is the idea of boishas, which in Jewish law is a major thing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the criminal justice system, that's not something that's looked at. Or maybe in some environments, being a rough and tough guy and getting locked up is a badge of honor. I don't know. But
Right.
so trying to understand that as well, and the embarrassment that comes with it, which is completely debilitating.
And then the family members are also embarrassed and they're also ashamed. It's like it's a two-part thing. What kind of chizik do you give? How do you speak to a child? Like you said before, it was an angry child telling the father, "I will not come and visit you again." What kind of words of chizik can you tell a family? This is your journey. There's a Rabbeinu Shalom. It is what it is. What do you share with these people?
It's a very good question, and it's very, very tough. Obviously, every instance is different. As I'm sure you know, for many people, the greatest and most important piece of it is just being seen and heard, and feeling that their anger, their resentment, their frustration, their anxiety, whatever it might be, that there's somebody that's listening to them and not judging them, because they've been judged by everybody.
Yeah.
They've been put down by everybody. So that's number one, is just providing a listening, caring ear. Right. Sometimes it's beyond anything else that you can provide, but just giving them a non-judgmental amount of love and connection.
Just sit there with them and be there with them. That's it.
The natural approach of a human being is to try and do some searching and to figure out what's going on over here. And this is an interesting but tough concept, and I heard it a lot. Again, my uncle would say it. He would often say, to a person, and I visited with him that doing something wrong, or allegedly having done something wrong, is not the reason that you're in prison. That only made you eligible to end up in prison. And the fact is that there might be other people that are walking around that did the same thing, if not worse, and they're not in prison. Mm-hmm. So he would challenge them and say, so what is the reason that you find yourself in this environment? Wow. And what is the reason that you have to be here? We always talk about the story of Yosef Atzadik from two perspectives. The famous story where he comes in the morning when he was in prison, and he sees the butler and the baker, and they're feeling extra sad that day, and he engages with them. And there's two beautiful lessons of it, which was, number one, that even when he was going through his own incarceration and his own challenge, being sold by his brothers and everything that was going on, he was still looking to see, how can I help another person? How can I help somebody else that is in this environment that may be doing a little worse than I am? And maybe I'm here to uplift them. That was one. And ultimately, that was what brings about his freedom, because he says, don't forget me when these interpretations will come true and you go before. And so by showing that kindness is what he was able to redeem himself. And so there is, to an extent, in certain environments, a sense of community that gets created. And people look out for each other. But this is a hard thing when talking to somebody, because naturally, like anything in life for any of us, when something doesn't go as we expected or as we hoped, or there's a curve in the road that was unforeseen, we have a big question. We say, why?
Yeah.
Why me? What's going on over here? And when we get to the point that we can pass all the initial pieces of it, we try to figure out.
So what you're saying is that this is the way to give meaning to it.
Absolutely. And for people to look at it from a meaningful way, it's a very hard thing to say, a very hard thing to hear. I've heard it from a lot of people, whether it's after the fact or during that when they've come to that point, that it was an experience which there was positive in it for them. Now,
about the kollel that we were talking about, that you guys go in and you learn with people, and men and women, where do you start? What kind of sforum? Is it Chovis Alvovas, Mesilis Tanya? Where do you start? Sometimes these people are affiliated, sometimes they're not affiliated. But where's the starting point?
Okay, so for starters, we do, regardless, provide, as I mentioned, many, many, many different books and svarim and English books in many different languages. We have what we call correspondence courses, which are on all types of subject matter, from the most basic for a person learning how to read Hebrew to learning about brachas, to learning about Shabbos, to learning about
Start from
kashrus.
Aleph base.
Start from Aleph base. But in these situations, as you said, sometimes you could have somebody who may have sat in yeshiva for many years and knows how to learn with all the mefarshim, and another person who's just getting started doesn't know anything. So we follow the structure of what I call the yeshiva in prison, basically a yeshiva, where obviously when we're davening together, for those that already understand, we make sure those that are new to it, teach them about putting on tefillin, how the process is, what the meaning behind it is, doing what we might call like a beginner type of prayer service, explaining the davening. Some environments where we're able to sit and eat with them, to explain to them about brachas and go through those types of things. And then there's different subjects. Of course, there's halacha, and there's mishnah, and there's gemara, and there's chassidus, and there's mussar. There's all the different things that are done. But what we do in advance is we generally know through asking through a questionnaire and other things the level of who's there and what they're doing. And it's very much in a chavrusa-based style. So when we're there, those that are going in already know who they're going to be learning with, so what they have to prepare, with some, maybe, as I said, he's learning a blat gemara with Mefarshim, with somebody else. He's possibly just giving him some background in Jewish history, so everybody's really being catered to at the level that they're at.
And do you find that people who get introduced to Yiddishkeit, and when they are eventually released, they hold on to this Yiddishkeit, or some fall back?
Look, in that environment, certainly for a sense of community and a sense of purpose, people are a lot more open, as they say. And we mentioned at the beginning, we do work in the military. No atheists in a foxhole. Yeah. So that environment, and especially, as I was saying, that there are many times that people aren't that affiliated, but Shabbos comes and they're able to get together as a group. All of a sudden, they very much want to be a part of it. But we try very hard to make sure that we stay connected to people. Some more, some less, but we also try to work very hard in local communities where we know they're going back to their homes, to make sure to introduce them in the local community, to the shul, to a Chabad house, to a rabbi, to Rebbe, to make sure that they stay connected.
Right.
And we do a lot of outreach to keep connected with them and to follow up with them. For many people, once they're done with the experience, they say, "I love you very much, but lose my number," because every time I see you, as much as I appreciate you, it takes me to a place that I don't want to be anymore. I want to be past that. Wow. Other people are very, so.
And you respect that,
of course.
What message do you have for loved ones and for family members of people who are in prison? They should know what Aleph stands for, and they should know that who has their back.
So my message to them is, first and foremost, do not be ashamed to reach out, because you have a family that cares for you. You have people that care, people that are engaged in this work, not for any other reason, but to be there for you. Everything is done confidentially. Everything is done with dignity. Everything is done with sensitivity. Nobody should ever feel alone that they have no one to call or nowhere to go, because Aleph is very much there to answer anytime, any call. The extent of sometimes the assistance that's needed can be a challenge, but we're certainly always working hard to try and address every need. But that's the most important. That's what we try to say as the motto of Aleph is, no one alone, no one forgotten. That, as difficult as it is, and people have pride, don't be ashamed to pick up the phone and call, because that's what we're there for. And there's no judgment, just love.
Wow, beautiful message. Do you find sometimes the Yid will tell you, I'm completely lost and I'm very angry and upset, and I don't want to hear a word about Yiddishkeit?
All the time.
Don't bother me. Don't put on tefillin. I'm not there yet.
Absolutely. We hear that all the time. And it's the same message. The same message is, we're not here to impose anything, chas v'shalom. If you want it, absolutely. We'll give you whatever we can to help
Right.
you live as a Yid. Otherwise, I'm just here as your brother to give you a hug, to give you some FaceTime, to tell you that I love you. And yes, I've seen it. I've dealt with people that were very, very angry, very, very distant from Yiddishkeit. And of course, the objective there is just to let them know that you're here on a human level, with brotherly love. That's
Right.
all
Right.
that it is.
Now, children visiting the parents and families visiting. Do you recall a story that is a tremendous heartbreak that you remember of an encounter like that?
So, personally, I don't visit in the visiting room so much with family, but obviously I've heard recounts and stories. Look, first of all, I not too long ago visited with somebody who was in a higher level security and was finally transferred to a camp status because the way that the rules work, if a person gets a sentence which is above 10 years, or if there's other aggravating factors in the case, sometimes they're not eligible to go into a camp environment, even if it is a white collar first time offense, nonviolent, above a certain amount of years, they're not eligible for it. Or if, let's say, they're a foreigner, other types of things. And in this particular instance, here was a father who, when I had seen him a number of times, but then I came to see him when I met with the group in the camp environment. He took me aside. He said, "I want you to know, last week was the first time in almost 38 months that I saw my children." He said, while I was behind the fence, as they call it, he says, I never wanted them to come. Somehow, I guess, in some of these environments, they tried to convince small children that, the father's away, he's traveling extensively, not necessarily telling them where and what's going on. But he had said that till he was in the camp where it's a lot more open, the way that they can spend time together, sometimes outside, whatever it might be, he didn't want them to see him there. So he hadn't seen his children by choice.
Yeah.
But also for them in a very long, which is just, that is completely heartbreaking. Or to see, when you have little children, coming in, there's a story that I didn't experience personally, but somebody else was mentioning how it impacted them. They were sitting in a visiting room, and it was before Pesach. And like Yiddish Kindlach, they are preparing for Pesach. They come home with a giant Haggadah. They prepare a whole time and everything. And here was this little child with their big Haggadah that they had prepared, knowing that they were not going to be with their father for the Pesach Seder, and standing over there and giving some of the Vertlach, saying the Manishtana, and going through, that experience. And so to see the brokenness and the pain on that parent, and having to feel the pain that maybe they take responsibility on themselves for causing that child, is something which is impossible to describe.
Wow, amazing stuff. Now, do they have an ability to watch, like, besides TV, do they have internet, they have communication, emails?
So they have emails.
They can watch a podcast or no?
Yes. So it depends. Right now, in the state systems, many of the state systems have specialized tablets that they have. Those tablets have all types of things on them. There's entertainment, there's music. Most of they have to buy. You have to buy these things. But we have developed like the Aleph app, which has a lot of recorded, podcast style things, shiurim, that they could watch and listen to classes, or material that we put on there. There's many hours that we've been able to.
But they have a certain amount of hours that they can watch. Is that what it is?
No, it's when they have free time based on their schedule. There, they can use it.
Because I remember for years it was TV only, and that's it.
Right, but and now this is where the Bureau of Prisons is catching up, because right now they do have a device, but it's really only some games or entertainment or movies, whatever it might be. But they're moving forward, which we're very, very hopeful for, and I know they're working very hard on it, because what it also provides is the opportunity for easier communication with the family. Obviously, with easier communication, they have to have their security concerns in place, but this can provide for video visitation. If a family cannot visit, they can visit them virtually. In speaking with the director of the Bureau of Prisons, he also spoke about the idea that when there are lockdowns, which are unfortunately very frequent in federal prisons, when there's contraband or other types of things that are found in the compound, everybody suffers. Everybody's locked down, meaning all the visitations are canceled. All commissary for everybody is stopped. Everything comes to a halt. Everybody is stuck where they are. And in higher level security environments, they're stuck in their cell for 23 hours a day. That's the way it is. But the objective here is they still have the ability to continue, because there are programming, with their learning, with their entertainment if they want. So there are some opportunities. We're trying to enhance that, because the objective is, and I think that's coming back to the beginning, what the idea was. The idea was to, of course, bring love, connection, warmth, opportunity, but also to be rehabilitative and to also create real educational opportunities, programs where people are utilizing their time. They call it doing time. This concept.
Doing what?
Yeah, but you talk about this concept. People say, something that some people become very frustrated by when somebody tells you, I got a couple hours to kill, so what do you got time to kill? But in these environments, it's literally what it is. People should just have time, and the question is what we can help to provide that they utilize the time in an effective, positive way.
Unbelievable. I want to quickly switch over, because I know Aleph Institute is also doing military work for military personnel. So the question is, how does military personnel being affected by Yiddishkeit? I mean, is it similar to what's going on in the prisons, even though they're not punished? But where's the difference between? I mean, how do you compare the two?
So it's a great question. So yes, we have a very large military program. We're the largest endorser of Jewish from chaplains to the different departments of the United States military, as well as providing all of these services. So you ask a good question. We are very mindful that on the one hand, we keep our different divisions quite separate, but people ask, so what's the connection? How do you get to this? And the connection is because we're dealing with what you might call individuals in institutional or limited environments. And at the end of the day, the military is an institutional limited environment, an environment where in many instances there are the same challenges, away from home, disconnected from community, limited resources. So a lot of those concepts are very similar, but obviously it's tailored in a very different way. If you think about during deployments and things of that nature, when there are servicemen and women that are overseas or away on a ship or on the front lines, their access to getting what they may need is coming. A Pesach is coming, Rosh Hashanah is coming, whatever it is, a Megillah, whatever it is. That's just from that perspective. It's also, as I said, endorsing with the Department of Defense, the chaplains that are entrusted to go out and care for their needs, but making sure that the chaplains have what they need and we can give that to them. But there's also a family component to it as well. Families are home, or sometimes families are stationed with the family member who's in the military in very remote places. Their access to schooling, Jewish schooling, is completely limited. So having opportunities for online schools or for online Hebrew schools, different opportunities of that nature. So there are many similar types of challenges which we address, and also within the government agencies, but obviously not making a comparison one way or another between the two communities. And that's why also our programs are specific. Our publications are very specific. We have a large distribution on a magazine called The National Liberator, which is a magazine that goes out 6 to 8 times a year, which is specifically for the prison environment, which addresses programs that are related to them, articles, information that is specific to that environment, or programs for their families, like Hanukkah is coming. If somebody doesn't have the ability, can, through us, not with our name, can request that a Hanukkah gift be sent to their child that shows up in an Amazon package with the father's name, with the mother's name, who's nothing to do with us. With those, so to provide them with that information, or if there's changes in the system, things that they could do, or if young things are coming up. And even when we do, it's coming out to Rosh Hashanah, we have separate calendars, separate types of publications. And with the military, we have the Warrior magazine, which is very focused on the military only. We do all of the publications, whether it's Chumoshim, Sidurim, whatever we're providing, and in many instances we do special printings of, because of the specifications, whether it's military or prison, it has to be a certain size, it has to be a certain type of cover, and it can't be bound this way, it can't have staples, it can't have a heart, whatever it might be. We produce everything very, very specific to that environment.
And do you feel that the military personnel have an emotional connection with Aleph like the prison people have?
There is a very, very special and deep connection.
Wow.
I'm going to invite you and encourage you that in February, when we host our annual military training, which we have to do as an endorsing agency, and coupled with that, we do a big Shabbos in the community for 400 or 500 people join us for Shabbos, and 200 of them are military personnel and their families, and the energy and the love and the things that you hear and the stories and the connections. People are, it's electric, and you should come and join it and be a part of it.
Where is that?
In the shul. That's where our main offices are, in Bell Harbor in Miami.
Wow.
And it's something which is very, very unique. And if you want to feel that warmth, that connection,
You can see
that's
it
the
over
time
there.
to see it.
Wow. Now, let me ask you, as far as the Aleph Institute, the business aspect of the Aleph Institute, is military, is it 50-50 between, or you're doing more work in the prisons than in the military?
In terms of the expense factor, we're probably more of the funds needed and raised are directed on the prison side, given the fact that the needs financially, whether it's with the families, is quite different. Obviously, a person that's in the military, that's their career, that's what they're doing. So we aren't necessarily stepping in or required to help them on that level, even though there are many instances where they ask for small stipends or small scholarships for different things, which we help with. But there, and also to do the work, most of the chaplains are government employees. They're enlisted and not enlisted. They're officers, but they're working for the military, and we're simply providing the support, the structure, the education, all of those things. Within the prison environment, it's very different. As I said, these people aren't. Person in prison is not working. The amount of staffing that is required to provide all of the different services, whether it's alternative sentencing, whether it's as I said, the judicial outreach that we're doing, whether it's the advocacy work, whether it's the religious programming work that we're doing, whether it's the preventative education, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but Project 432, P32, which has been growing consistently, which is preventative education, going out into the communities, into schools, into kohelim, into shuls, into different business environments, young leadership environments, and just push it, talking about preventative education, the challenges, the pitfalls, the issues that come up. We've created curriculums that are being utilized now widely in different high schools, in different schooling environments, which focus, on the preventative side of things. Mm-hmm. So, all of these different departments and things require, a big team, which are completely unbelievable and dedicated. But it's approximately 80 full-time people that are working for Aleph. So yes, from the resources, a lot more is required to achieve the results on the prison side than on the military side.
One final question. Who is your role model?
Well, my role model, I would definitely say, was my uncle. He was a person that I had the tremendous chus to work alongside him for close to 25 years. And just to be able to watch his relentless, tireless commitment to whatever it was that he was doing in general, his love and commitment to the Rebbe. He was a soldier. His love to the Eibishter, and the way that he embodied that and lived that, the way that he interacted with every person that he met, always saw the potential, always saw the good, always saw the opportunity for this person, and was relentlessly communicative and responsive. People didn't understand how he was communicating with the people that he was and at the time of day that he was. But he was a person that embodied 100%, 24 hours a day, what he did and what he believed, like an absolute soldier. So that to me is the greatest inspiration. If I can even be a small amount of what he was, and truly was a person that when you say he did it with love and he did it without judgment, that really was the way that he did. And he would often say, what is true love? What is true love? True love is, as you say, oyehev misha oyehav oyehev. If you say I love someone, how do you express your love? By loving what they love. If you love them, you'd love. If you don't love what they love, your love is limited to other things. So always say, and that is what it means to love the Eibishter. You could say, I love the Eibishter, but that Yid, not so much. But the Eibishter loves every Yid. So as challenging,
love what they love.
Love what they love.
That's very profound.
And then and that's what it is. You may not have to always love their behavior. You may not always, but you always love them.
Wow. Amazing stuff. What we heard today is a call to remember that every human being is a neshama, is a chaylik elokayim mal mamish. That's what we heard today. Unbelievable stuff. The Aleph Institute holds the hand of families and neshamas and yidden all over the world. The lesson is never to take our freedom for granted, right? How can we help the Aleph Institute if a person is listening to this and he's inspired and he says, you know what, I want to chaylik on this thing?
Well, there are many opportunities to help, whether it's a person in a professional capacity, might be a lawyer that wants to help with pro bono hours, whether it's a person who just wants to do chesed hours, somebody who wants to help with families, help take a family who needs to visit a prison but doesn't necessarily have the emotional strength to do it, to encourage them. We have pen pal programs. We have a program called Torah on the Telephone where we have several thousand people that are learning on a regular basis. This was started more during COVID, but it's continuing where people can study with people on the phone, and that doesn't diminish their limited phone time. They have extra time to do Torah on the telephone. There's something called the AVC, which is the Aleph Visitation Circle. There are many people, unfortunately, that don't have family or are disconnected. They don't get visits. And this is not visiting in the official capacity of Aleph where we go and meet with the whole group, but people who go almost as an in-person pen pal. People that go and visit in the visiting room to people that don't have anybody else to visit them. So people can, there's many, many opportunities that people can do. And certainly if people feel inspired and would like to share the resources, Aleph is not funded by the government. We don't have any government funding. It's all funded by people that feel a sense of the importance of what we're doing and participate generously to help us, continue to do what we're doing. And as I said earlier, there are so many different aspects to what we're doing that if a person feels that they want to support a particular part of Aleph, that is certainly something which is always available and can be made very, very clear where their direct impact goes.
And it covers all grounds.
Absolutely. And we operate on a fairly modest annual budget to get it all done. It's just approximately $10 million a year, which we rely on the kindness of people to participate and support.
The Rebbeinu Shalom should give you koyach to continue and go in the druchim of your uncle. You should have nachas and you should have health and you should continue to light up the world.
Amen.
Wow, beautiful. And thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.